reconciliation bill last year, almost $25 billion appropriated by Congress for a program that had not yet started. That is unprecedented. So, I mean, the Golden Dome was fired out of a cannon, and then boy, has it stalled. Boy, has the momentum stalled since then.
So you telling me that the headline, boy, it has stalled? From the Defense and Aerospace Report, this is The Downlink, a podcast about the intersection of space, the space business, and defense. Not just what's over the horizon, but what's happening above it. I'm your host, Laura Winter. Golden Dome. We've been hearing or reading these two words a lot lately. The U.S. president has said and posted on Truth Social that sovereign control over Greenland is necessary for the Golden Dome missile shield program. And by now, you are likely aware that Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory governed by the Kingdom of Denmark, and that the Danes and the Greenlanders aren't all that interested in any deal that cedes the territory to the United States. Denmark is a longtime U.S. ally. That may be past tense now, at least in spirit, but the kingdom is one of the 12 founding NATO nations. And in the wake of 9/11, Danish boots were on the ground in Afghanistan by December 2001. Denmark has been such a close ally of the United States. It signed the 1951 Defense of Greenland Treaty. That binding contract essentially gives the United States free rein to do whatever it wants militarily and when it wants on the territory. I'm giving you these data points for context because the latest is that on Wednesday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, President Donald Trump announced that he would not use force to take Greenland and that a framework that is surely going to include Golden Dome was being worked out with the help of the NATO Secretary General. But did you know that just in a few days' time, we will mark a year since President Trump signed the executive order that set the Golden Dome program into motion? That was January 27, 2025. The administration's cost estimate through the end of this president's term is $175 billion. In July, the U.S. Congress allocated what's thought to be about $24 billion as a down payment to kickstart the program. But Congress, in its role of representing U.S. taxpayers, it is not an angel investor. And this week, in the current wording of the 2026 Defense Appropriations Bill, the authors state that they have received insufficient budgetary information to effectively assess and conduct oversight. So to discuss the state of play, the progress that's been made or not been made in the past 12 months to develop the Golden Dome missile defense shield, we have Todd Harrison. Here's our conversation. Hey, Todd, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Laura. Glad to be back.
And aren't you piping into us from Phoenix?
Yeah, I'm in Phoenix right now, but about to go to the airport. So,
well, then I'm really grateful that you're making the time for this discussion. But please do take a quick moment and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Todd Harrison. I'm a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute.
And he also happens to be the Washington, D.C. area budget guru on all things to do with budget and defense. And don't you also have a wee bit of an announcement to make concerning your space data navigator?
Yeah, it's a side project I've been working on for a few months. If you go to space data, all one word, .aei.org, basically what I built is an online tool where it pulls the latest data on launches, satellites, space debris, and makes interactive charts that you can customize. You can filter and sort the data. And if you're like me, you want to sometimes just grab the image of the chart to use it in the presentation, or you want to download the raw data so you can make it yourself in Excel. It lets you do all of that. And I built it so it will automatically update every day to the latest data. So it's a free tool. It's out there for all of the space nerds like me that want to keep up with what's going on in global, space activity.
I love tools like this because we really do need more transparency on what is going on above the horizon. And it is really hard to keep track of it all, right?
Hmm.
So here we are, just a few days away from the anniversary of President Donald Trump putting his signature on the presidential executive order, the Iron Dome for America, which we now call Golden Dome, which now has other names, and it seems to kind of keep morphing in terms of names, but everyone knows it for Golden Dome. And what I really want to get after with you, and we'll touch upon Greenland in a few minutes, but if you were to look back at the past 12 months and had to write a report for the Institute or an opinion piece, I'd really love to know what would be your headline for what has been accomplished in these 12 months. So
Yeah.
how would you sum it up?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's I think the theme would be momentum, right? And Golden Dome, it started out like it was shot out of a cannon with huge, White House backing, White House support, huge support from Congress, an enormous advance appropriation through the reconciliation bill last year, almost $25 billion appropriated by Congress for a program that had not yet started. That is unprecedented. So, I mean, the Golden Dome was fired out of a cannon, and then boy, has it stalled. Boy, has the momentum stalled
So
since
you
then.
telling me that the headline, boy, it has stalled? Is that it?
Yeah. I don't write the headlines. So,
Oh, come on, come on, come
but,
on. You
but
like a good
yeah,
quirky headline, but yeah, all right. So, well, why has it stalled? I mean,
I
let's
wish we
unpack that.
knew. Yeah. So, I think the basic reason, the obvious reason is the Pentagon has not produced the details that were expected. They have not come out with a spending plan for the 25 billion that was already appropriated. They have not come out with an actual architecture, only some vague notional ideas. They have not been specific about what the objectives are for Golden Dome. Like, is it going to do counter drone defense? Is it going to do, cruise missile and air defense? Or is it going to be focused on strategic missile defense, long range ballistic missiles, FOBs, hypersonic missiles? There are a whole bunch of threats that were talked about. And the question is, okay, are you scoping this to protect against all of those or just some of those? Right. And it makes a big difference in terms of what the architecture is ultimately going to be. So
And
they
cost.
just, and cost, and they also have not talked about what is the capacity of the threat that they're going to try to protect against. All of these are fundamental questions that get to the basics of the architecture. And here we are 12 months later, they still have not been answered.
And they still have a whole lot of money.
And they have a whole lot of money. They've started awarding places on contract vehicles, but they have not started spending the money, actually obligating the money.
All right, hold that because that's exactly where we're going right now. Let's talk about the money and oversight, right? And depending upon who you ask, or at least that's the way it seems to me, the big beautiful bill allocated 23 billion to this Golden Dome project, or 25 billion. I mean, it's the numbers seem also a wee bit amorphous, right?
Depends on what you count as Golden Dome because we
There
don't
you
know
go.
what it
Eye of the
is.
beholder, right? Is it the
Yeah.
big, beautiful, whatever? Okay, is it golden? I don't know. But yeah, right. I mean, it really does seem to depend on who you ask. And, what are we 6 months later after the big, beautiful bill, which put in that money without an architecture, without a plan? But here we are 6 months later. And now the House and the Senate seem to be fed up with the lack of information about the progress supposedly being made. The latest version of the Defense Appropriations Bill is putting in deadlines for reporting on what money is being spent on what Golden Dome related activity. And these are huge sums of money. So, what's going on here between the Hill and the Pentagon regarding Golden Dome spending and progress?
Yeah, so I think what we've seen in both the authorization bill and now the appropriations bill is strong support from Congress. They support the idea of Golden Dome. They want to see it get moving, but they are frustrated with the lack of details and the lack of visible progress that they have seen. And so they are doing what they can, in their oversight role to try and push the department along and push the department with deadlines, with reporting requirements, to try to get this thing moving to break whatever logjam there is within the administration that is stalling progress. So I see this as Congress's way of trying to help.
What's the problem of the Pentagon and specifically, I mean, I don't really mean to throw the Space Force General Michael Gutlein under the bus because I don't know what orders he's under. So that's unfair to assume that this is his decision. But as he's the head of it, there is a criticism that this is just too secretive. And this is a huge amount of taxpayer money. I mean, the people who listen to this podcast pay taxes and want to know where their taxes go to. Is this criticism justified?
Yeah, I think General Gutlein, I would not lay the criticism at him.
Me
He's
neither.
the person in charge.
Yeah. And we don't know,
but
right?
We don't know what the vaccine discussions are. But the way I look at it is, in that Oval Office visit from, I think it was May of last year when President Trump, they billed it as they were going to announce the Golden Dome architecture.
Right.
So we
I
all
remember
tuned in
that.
for this. And what they actually did was just announce that General Gutlein was going to lead it. They did not announce anything about an architecture. And so, that's the first time we had the rug pulled out from under us on this. But, in that Oval Office visit where he announced General Gutlein, the president laid down several markers. He said that Golden Dome would be completed. That was his word, completed before he leaves office. So within 3 years.
And that's according to the presidential executive order too. So that was in line with what he's been saying since January 27th, 2025.
So he set a marker for the time allowed, right? The schedule. And then he said it would be nearly 100% effective. Okay. So he set a marker for performance. And then he said it would cost, once completed, total cost $175 billion. So he set the cost. So once you have set the cost, the schedule, and the performance, you have locked in your system, right? You have bounded it. The problem is those three things do not close. You cannot, complete it within 3 years and it be 100% effective and only cost $175 billion. And that's what my analysis has shown is that, that iron triangle of engineering there with cost, schedule, and performance, it does not close. And I think that's what General Gutlein has been handed. He's been handed something that cannot possibly work. So he's got to come back with an architecture for the president, for this administration, that falls short on all three of those things. Something that will not be completed within 3 years, but hopefully you can show there's some progress within 3 years. He's got to show something that's going to cost way more than $175 billion, but maybe he can say, hey, it'll only cost $175 billion in your term of office or within the FIDEP, the 5-year planning period. And he's got to come back and say, hey, it's not going to be 100% effective. No missile defense system is, but we can get, pretty close to a reasonable level of effectiveness like Israel's Iron Dome.
But isn't even effectiveness in the eye of the beholder as well? I mean, if you say that 100% effectiveness is being able to intercept 5 ICBMs, and that's irregardless of multiple reentry vehicles, otherwise known as MERV. I mean, isn't effectiveness in the eye of the beholder?
You can scope down the threat and you can say, well, I'm only talking about 100% effective, if it's a single ICBM and I'll fire 100 interceptors at it. And I'll get to like 99.9, right? So he can do that game of scoping the threat, in a way that, you've got enough capacity. You can claim a pretty decent effectiveness rate, but that's something he's got to do. And it's, and then he's coming back. I would imagine, I am guessing here. I don't know, but I would imagine he's coming back with plans that fall short on cost, schedule, and performance compared to what the president said. and he's got to convince them, like, this is the best we can do. This is feasible. And, maybe, the higher ups within the department and the administration, they just aren't signing off yet.
All right. I just want to bring everybody up to date because there have been a few revelations coming out of the current draft of the Defense Appropriations Bill, which is still being debated and still being worked on the Hill. But allegedly, according to reporting, the requirements would be that 2 months from the bill passage, the Defense Secretary and Golden Dome Director must provide a detailed breakdown of the funding through 2027. And so that's 60 days from whenever Trump signs that bill. That there should also be a quarterly update given by the Golden Dome Director, again, Gutlein, on budget execution and the status of activities. So that's pretty prescriptive. And then in 2028, two things. There should be an initial operational capability target. That's interesting. And then also starting that same year that the Pentagon Comptroller must submit a separate annual budget justification volume for the Golden Dome. And that to me, I also find really interesting because when you think about the volumes, things that are considered volumes, those are very high level, as in branch level, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be elevating it to a very high importance in terms of clarity and insight and what they're expecting to get.
Yeah, it does elevate it. I mean, if it would have its own PDF file for it, and it would then integrate together all the different funding lines and programs that are being called part of Golden Dome. And so that would really simplify it for Congress.
Make our lives easier, that's for sure.
Yeah, to show it all together.
That's exciting right there.
Yes, it is. I would love it. I believe it when I see it because it's going to be complicated for the department to do because how do you wall off the line around what's Golden Dome and what's not, especially when there are a lot of pre-existing ongoing programs that are part of it, but they've been funded somewhere else by the Missile Defense Agency or by, the Army or the Navy or the Space Force, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you take a look at how Gutlein has been charged, and I mean, again, my heart just goes right out to him for this. It just seems like beg, borrow, and steal from everybody to pull together this program.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is a program of programs, and it's a lot of pre-existing programs. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be complicated. And, but again, Congress can put these things into law. And yes, technically the department is obliged to meet these reporting deadlines and provide this information and produce these budget documents the way that they're asked. If DOD does not do that, it is up to Congress to then enforce their law. And I don't see any enforcement mechanism. So that's why I don't think they necessarily will follow this and do all of the things that Congress is asking.
All right. Well, that's kind of where the rub is, right? Because Congress, they're the overseers. I mean, they're the ones that look out for our money, our taxpayer money is being invested correctly. So I want to go back to continue rather with the money because you have estimates. And I know that they're really, really detailed. And what I'm about to ask you is incredibly unfair, but I'm pretty sure that you're up for it. But could you give us like two scenarios in terms of money? And I know that you've done this, that you have a system of, if you build an architecture that can take down 5 ICBMs, if you build an architecture that can take down 100 ICBMs, and these are just ICBMs. We haven't even talked about hypersonics and fractional orbital bombardment systems, right? But just something of that nature. I mean, could you give the audience just a little depth and breadth of what that cost would be according to that operational capability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I did a whole analysis of this and put an online tool up there where you can build your own Golden Dome, right?
It's there on the American Enterprise Institute website, and I highly recommend it.
So you can just Google "build your own Golden Dome," get the report, and then go log into our Defense Future Simulator, and you can build your own architecture, cost it out, depending on what you want it to do. I would say that the baseline, if you're going to do any kind of significant missile defense, is you've got to have all of the sensing and the command and control stuff, right? Because if you can't see it, you can't shoot it. It doesn't really matter about the quantity. You still have to have a baseline level of sensing and
So what
command
would
and
a
control.
baseline cost?
Yeah. So that's where we're already building a lot of this stuff. We're already building, the proliferated warfighter architecture up in space. If you want to continue those things and add to it, expand it, add more command and control to integrate all this stuff, you're looking at, in the order of, $10 billion or so, depending on how fancy you want to go. Then you get to the interceptors, and that's where the
That's
big
what he
money goes.
wants. That's the
So,
presidential executive order.
yeah, so you get to the interceptors. Your big question there on cost is how much, if any, do you want to do from space-based interceptors, right? That then throws the cost up by more than an order of magnitude. If you want to build out a space-based layer of interceptors, because of the absenteeism problem that the interceptors are already orbiting the Earth, every 90 minutes, vast majority of them are going to be in the wrong place where they can't intercept a threat.
At least not
So
in the
you have
boost
to,
phase.
yeah, so you have to have so many more interceptors in space than missiles you can actually intercept in a salvo. The scaling is just exponentially bad. And so if you want to do it from space, it is going to cost much more money than if you want to do it using ground-based interceptors. Now, if you're using ground-based interceptors, the problem is you're not going to be able to hit a missile in boost phase. The best time to hit a missile, other than on the ground before it fires, is in the boost phase before it can deploy decoys and multiple warheads and things like that. If you're using ground-based interceptors, you're going to have to hit it in the mid-course or in the terminal phase, right? And so you probably want a layered defense, but you're still going to need a large number of interceptors, less than you would need in space because of absenteeism, but still a very large number. So then it comes down to what is the capacity? What is the salvo capacity, the number of missiles fired at once that you want to be able to intercept? And that is what's going to govern your architecture. And so there
And
you could
therefore your
spend,
cost.
yeah, you could spend from, tens of billions of dollars deploying ground-based interceptors up to many hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars actually, deploying space-based interceptors. So what is it you want? What is the mix that you want?
All right. Not quite as exact as I had hoped for.
It just scales a lot with how many missiles you want to be able to intercept, and we haven't even talked about, do you want to do counter drone defense? Do you want to do cruise missile defense?
Well, do you want to
Those are different
defend? Do you want to
systems.
defend your space-based interceptors? Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
that, right? I mean, if you put something up there, you might want to
Well,
defend it, right?
one of the side benefits or problems, depending on your perspective, of space-based interceptors is they also are basically anti-satellite weapons themselves. So you could use some, portion of your space-based interceptors to defend the constellation itself if someone tries to attack it. So there's that. But then you've got to, enlarge
then
your
you're down.
constellation more. And
But then you're
yeah,
down, right?
well, and you may be producing debris at the orbital altitudes where your interceptors are. There's problems with that.
It's just very, very, very big and very, very secretive in any way. So let's talk about what we can see. And you have touched upon it a few moments ago, and that's all, about momentum, because this really is a massive lift. And I don't think people understand that. And that's, again, why I do have a lot of empathy and compassion for the folks that are in the five-sided building that are working on this, because this is huge. And there's a lot of equities being mashed together. And there's a lot of, how should I say, office politics that are probably involved, right? But nevertheless, in November, there was a report that Gutlein had not been able to fill the 30 billets that he reportedly has for a staff. Things do take a long time in the Pentagon to do. It does seem like the MDA, or the Missile Defense Agency, has taken over a lot of the contracting, with a very interesting contracting vehicle called, it's a multiple award, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. It's called the Scalable Homeland Innovated Enterprise Layered Defense, or SHIELD. That's the
Talk
acronym.
about a forced acronym.
Yeah, really, right? I mean, that's just hard.
Yeah.
But there have been 3 announcements since December. So that's kind of sort of momentum. And the announcements are kind of odd because these aren't really contract announcements. People like calling them contract announcements, but they're not contract announcements, because the announcement really is that these organizations, and there's about 2,440 of them, these organizations have the right to bid for a contract.
The opportunity. Yeah.
The opportunity.
So
they've been cleared. They've been cleared to participate. And these are companies, these are universities, and other kinds of organizations that the Missile Defense Agency has said is good enough to bid on contracts.
So the way I would describe it is, it's like if you're trying to buy concert tickets on Ticketmaster, what they've done is they got into the waiting room. You still don't necessarily get a ticket, but you got into the waiting room. If you didn't get into this contract vehicle, then you're not even getting into the waiting room. Like, too bad, you've got no chance. But if you got into it, you're still not guaranteed anything. You just got into the waiting room. And then now when something, becomes available, if it comes your way, you could then try for it, but probably not going to get it, because they let like 2,000 companies into this. So really what they've done is they've produced a master list of the U.S. defense industrial base. So I'm sure China has downloaded that.
So have we. But, there have been also the reports from November that there are, I believe, 4 companies that have contracts that range from 9 million to 10 million. That's according to reports, to develop a prototype space-based interceptor vehicle that should be able to destroy a threat in the boost phase. And I got to say, is that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, that's a baby step. So 9 to 10 million is usually enough.
It's the right direction. It's space-based interceptors.
Well, that's enough to do a little PowerPoint study and give it back to the department and say, hey, we did some back of the envelope analysis, and we paid a bunch of, expensive engineers to sit around and make PowerPoint slides. And here's what we've got. And, do you really want us to move forward with this? If you do, we're going to need some money. I think, what we've seen previously is the department was trying to say, hey, you companies, why don't you invest your own money? Which I think would be a ridiculous proposition if I was in industry, because I don't see any real follow through on the space-based interceptors. Like, once we get to a new administration and they actually spell out for the next president, this is what's going to be required in terms of numbers of interceptors and cost and replenishment rates and everything. And this is the tiny threat that you can address with this. There's no way I think that space-based interceptors, boost phase at least, are going to go forward. So this would be a ridiculous thing for companies to invest their own money in. So if DoD is only putting 9 to 10 million right now, that suggests that they're just looking for some paper studies.
I also find it, and Gus, correct me if I'm wrong, but it also makes me feel that this sort of exercise really skews towards large defense contractors, the primes, because the primes might say, you know what, we're going to pull out all the stops because we know that on the other side that there could be a lot of money there, right? So they can invest. They have a pot that they can use to really get after this, gussy it up, and hopefully be chosen on the other side. But if you're a small contractor, it just seems like the cards are just stacked against you, because you have to go then to your venture capitalists and say, hey, we need yada, 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 this much money so that we can actually compete with the primes when we're going for this contract. And yes, there is a possibility of a big reward on the other side, but it puts the risk on the company. And some companies are better built to take that risk than others.
I think it cuts different ways. So with the big defense contractors, they can absorb some internal R&D like this a bit better. And also they probably, some of them are going to have pre-existing technology that DoD paid for them to develop for other classified things that they can just turn around and
Or the
reuse for this.
Strategic Defense Initiative, because we're talking the same
Yeah.
folks.
So there's that. But these large defense companies, they don't have a lot of appetite for risk. Whereas the venture capital private equity funded companies, they're risk hungry. They are risk seeking. And so they may be actually able to go to investors and say, hey, it's maybe a 1 in 10 chance that we get this, but boy, would the payoff be huge if we did. So give us a few tens of millions of dollars, let us invest and make our own prototype, and let's just try it. And let's just see if we roll the dice, maybe we win big. And there are plenty of, venture capitalists who are like, yeah, let's do that. I need some high risk, high reward opportunities in my portfolio that'll balance out some other things. And, they may be willing to do it. But yeah, and the whole thing, I think the odds are extremely low that boost phase space-based interceptors actually move forward after this administration. I think we're likely all we're going to see is some prototypes and demonstrations, and then say, yep, well, we could do it if we wanted to, but we're not. That's my prediction.
All right. Hold on to that thought, because I've got one other thing to get after with you, and it is also about momentum, right? I mean, my goodness, have we seen momentum behind the Greenland issue? Back and forth. It's been like, being under a tank battle where you see a volley go one way and then you see a volley go the other way. So Greenland, there have been some developments, but we understand that President Trump has linked Greenland and his idea that Greenland must become part or owned by the United States for Golden Dome. A, is that actually really necessary? B, doesn't the 1951 treaty with Denmark cover everything that we need? And then C, when we take a look at what has developed overnight just before we started recording today, there's this idea that perhaps the United States may be granted some sort of sovereignty deal over pieces or patches of ground or ice in Greenland for U.S. military bases. And that we know at least one of them would be connected with Golden Dome for sure. Right. And that's Pitufuk Space Force Base.
Yeah.
So what is this? But it's got momentum, that's for sure.
Yeah, it does. And it's made a kind of a big issue with our NATO allies in Europe with the way the president has gone about pursuing this and threatening the use of military force against our NATO ally. So I think that there's been some long-term damage in that relationship that they may be able to patch over now. But there are going to be some pretty deep scars and some raw tissue there for years to come, as long as this president remains in office.
Loss of trust.
And
trust is a big deal.
Yes. So I think strategically, this was a huge, huge misstep on the part of the president. Now, is Greenland important to Golden Dome? Well, I'll back up and say Greenland is geographically important territory because it extends into the Arctic region, which is the perfect place to put ground-based radar for homeland missile defense.
Which we already have there.
It's so perfect. We've already done it.
Right.
And so we've already have our ground-based radar there that we have used for decades for, our North American air defense system, right? And we've even upgraded it in more recent years. And Greenland has been a perfect and fabulous partner in letting us operate there and letting us do whatever we need to do for our own homeland defense. And by the way, we also use that radar for space surveillance because, most of the time there's not an ICBM flying over the poles towards the United States. So we can use it to track other things in space, which it is a great location for that because of its high latitude. So yeah, it is important. It'll continue to be important to Golden Dome, whatever architecture takes shape. But do we need sovereignty over it? Do we need to take the whole country of Greenland? Absolutely not, because they're already letting us do exactly what it is we want to do and need to do. I mean, You could
So wouldn't the
theoretically.
question be then, if there is a demand for sovereignty or a long-term lease that grants sovereignty, it's kind of akin to the ground station that the Chinese have in Argentina, Tejano. They have basically complete sovereignty over that patch of land. It kind of begs the question, well, why would you need to have complete sovereignty unless you felt that you could be at risk or that you would do something, well, that would not
I
be in Denmark's or Greenland's interests from that location, which also kind of
Right.
seems really far-fetched, because why would
I
we
I
do
I
that
don't think
anyway?
I don't think there's a legitimate reason, right? I think that all of this was an excuse. It was trying to come up with a rationale for why we need Greenland that would compel people to support it, more people to support it. And so someone must have come up with the idea, link it to Golden Dome, because there is that thin linkage, right? But yeah, you don't need Greenland, right? Greenland, in what situation would their interests not be aligned with our interest when it comes to, missile defense, strategic missile defense? I cannot foresee, unless you believe that we're going to pull out of NATO, or we are actually going to go to war with a NATO country or something, preposterous like that. So
Maybe we're
yeah,
afraid that they're going to launch chunks of ice.
who knows? So I wouldn't pay too much attention to it, because what the president was saying about Greenland, it was just detached from the reality of the relationship we actually have with Greenland and the facilities that we have already located in Greenland. So it's just detached from reality. It's part of the circus, right? That surrounds this White House and their policy announcements. And so in a month from now, we probably will have forgotten about this, and we'll be talking about something totally different. So I think ultimately the president will realize that we already have what we need. He's not going to get Greenland. And so they will find some sort of a face-saving way to move on from it. And maybe it is, they claim that we've gotten some sovereignty or some extra control over our facilities there that we somehow didn't already have. And then we move on. I mean, I've seen one of the off ramps that's been proposed has been, make it more like a Guantanamo Bay situation. But again, like, the analogy breaks down, because Cuba's an adversary. Like, they would not let us do anything in Guantanamo Bay if they could control that. Greenland is not an adversary. So I think the whole thing is just a bit of a circus sideshow.
All right. We're running out of time. So I want to give you one last bite at the apple. What would be your headline for the first 12 months of Golden Dome? Headline.
Yeah. Fired out of a cannon into a wall.
Oh, thank you so much, Todd, for making the time to come on the podcast.
This is why they don't let me write headlines. So.
All right. Thank you, and safe travels.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. For your daily dose of award-winning defense coverage, listen to the Defense and Aerospace Report with Vago Muradian. And for the maritime domain, listen to Cavas Ships with Chris Cavas and Chris Cervello. And get your air domain news and analysis from the Air Power Podcast with JJ Gertler and Vago Muradian. I'm Laura Winter. Thank you for listening.